Okay, let's just dive right in. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack a massive, fundamental shift happening in how software is actually built, and more importantly, how it survives in the real world. We're looking at the fascinating journey of taking a seemingly magical AI-generated application from platforms like Ajath AI and figuring out how to make its graduation into a hardened, enterprise-ready production environment an entirely repeatable and secure process using GitHub Actions.
Right, so if you've ever built this amazing AI prototype only to have your IT team take one look at it and say, yeah, we absolutely cannot launch this, then you know exactly what that production gap feels like. It is incredibly frustrating, isn't it? You've just used cutting-edge AI to spin up an app that works beautifully right there on your screen. You show it to the stakeholders, they absolutely love it, and then, boom, you hit a brick wall. The infrastructure engineers realize it's just not ready for the wild. But why exactly does this happen? Well, it actually starts with the very method you use to build it.
And that method is what we call vibe coding. It's this incredible process where product managers, designers, or really any citizen developer can build fully interactive applications in literal minutes. You're just using plain language, chatting with advanced AI agents like Maya 4 on the Ajath AI platform. It's absolutely brilliant for instantly translating your ideas into functional code because it virtually eliminates those traditional design delays and the endless back and forth with development teams. But here's the catch. Because it's so incredibly fast and accessible, it introduces a brand new bottleneck for infrastructure teams. Suddenly, they have to figure out how to safely host these apps that were just generated out of thin air.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer to solve this exact problem. First, we'll look at the vibe coding bottleneck. Second, graduating from Ajath AI. Third, automating with GitHub Actions. And finally, enterprise scale and governance.
Let's get right into Section 1, the vibe coding bottleneck, and unpack this demo-to-production gap.
Think about the stark contrast between the fast, built-in tools of a prototyping sandbox and the strict, secure reality of real enterprise infrastructure. When you are vibe coding in that Ajath sandbox, you are playing on an infinite canvas. You've got parallel agents handling your design, your authentication, and your database setup all at the exact same time. It uses zero setup databases and default public authentication just to get you moving as fast as possible. But flip over to what enterprise production actually demands, and it's a totally different story. We're talking segregated PostgreSQL databases, highly complex single sign-on or SAML integrations, and incredibly strict SOC 2 compliance. That massive gap between the sandbox and the enterprise reality, that is exactly where vibe-coded apps get stuck.
So the crucial takeaway here is that while the AI agent generates probabilistic code, which means it's fluid, it's creative, and honestly, sometimes a bit unpredictable, your enterprise environment demands absolute deterministic guardrails to function safely. To bridge that gap, IT teams have to step in and enforce strict data isolation. They need to rip out that basic sandbox authentication and wire the application directly into corporate identity providers, things like Auth0 or Okta. Plus, because an AI wrote this code, it requires rigorous security vulnerability screening to meet frameworks like HIPAA and SOC 2. You simply cannot just trust the AI. You have to verify it against strict enterprise standards.
Which brings us to Section 2, graduating from Ajath AI. Graduation is basically the formal rite of passage for your software. It is the process of taking that multi-agent generated code base, the stuff Maya 4 just whipped up for you, and pulling it completely out of that infinite canvas. You are officially handing it off from the non-technical product team over to the infrastructure engineers by checking it into professional version control like Git and GitHub. And the main goal? To do all of this without losing a single drop of the context or functionality that the citizen developer just vibe coded.
To do that, you need a playbook, specifically a 4-step curriculum required to harden this code base for the real world. Step 1 is the code handoff, where you move everything from Maya 4 into GitHub. Step 2 is database and API migration, meaning you swap out those zero setup data layers for highly scalable professional databases. Step 3 is automated CI/CD, where you establish your deployment pipelines. And Step 4 is governance, enabling IT monitoring. Now, to really make this scalable, Step 3 is where the absolute magic of IT engineering takes over from the magic of AI. And that leads us perfectly into Section 3, automating with GitHub Actions. Because vibe-coded apps are constantly evolving through rapid AI iteration, you absolutely must have a CI/CD pipeline. That's continuous integration and continuous deployment. GitHub Actions is the tool that automatically tests and pushes these code updates. Think about it. If a product manager asks Maya 4 to add a brand new feature, and the AI pushes a massive code update, you simply cannot manually review every single line if you want to keep moving fast.
GitHub Actions acts as your strict operational guardrail. It catches errors, it runs tests, and it manages the staging process completely automatically before anything ever touches your end users.
Once that code is handed off, GitHub Actions immediately takes the wheel, and the speed is just wild. Look at this timeline. At minute 1, the AI or the developer commits the new code to GitHub. By minute 4, GitHub Actions has already automatically spun up security and vulnerability testing to make sure no non-compliant code snuck its way in. By minute 8, assuming it passes, it's deployed to a staging environment for a final review. And by minute 12, you have a full production release live on AWS, Google Cloud, or Vercel. This automated pipeline is exactly what makes graduating from Ajath AI a repeatable process. You're not reinventing the wheel every time someone builds an app. The pipeline does the heavy lifting. If you take one thing away from this entire explainer, let it be this highly practical philosophy. Probabilistic AI code requires deterministic IT automation. Remember, you are relying on rigid, automated, highly predictable systems like GitHub Actions to tame the inherently unpredictable nature of AI-generated code. Maya 4 brings the creativity and the speed, while your CI/CD pipeline brings the safety, the compliance, and the reliability. You simply cannot have scalable vibe coding without this balance.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 4, Enterprise Scale and Governance.
So, what happens post-deployment? This is where strict enterprise governance standards come into play. IT teams have to retain the ability to monitor, audit, and govern these applications. When apps are being built left and right by non-technical teams using parallel agent workflows, the infrastructure team's whole job shifts. They go from writing the code to governing the systems. They have to continuously audit the AI-generated infrastructure to make sure it maintains those secure, scalable data layers we talked about earlier. Proper governance ensures that even as a citizen developer keeps using AI to update their app, the enterprise as a whole remains perfectly compliant and secure.
Ultimately, this is a fundamental shift in how we build and deploy software. The main bottleneck for businesses is no longer writing the code, the bottleneck is securely hosting it. Which leaves us with a really important question to chew on. As AI continues to write code at these unprecedented speeds, how are you going to evolve your enterprise infrastructure, your pipelines, and your handoff processes to actually support and scale it? Ask yourself, are your current deployment pipelines actually ready for the era of vibe coding? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go take a fresh look at your own CI/CD pipelines through this new lens.